inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
My guest on the podcast today got caught up in what sounds like it was a real estate scam. She bought what's called a turnkey rental property. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, a turnkey rental property is a property that you would buy that's been freshly rehabbed. It has a tenant in place, and after you close on the property, the turnkey company continues to manage the property. There's some really good companies out there that provide this service, but there's also some really bad turnkey companies out there that are really out there to take advantage of you and steal your money. And unfortunately, my guest today got caught up with a bad company. She lost a bunch of money and has had a really tough time trying to clean this mess up. So I want to see exactly what happened to her today. And I also want to see if we can identify some red flags, some things that maybe looking back on it, she should have picked up on, things that we can walk away and kind of keep in our back pocket to make sure something like this doesn't happen to us in the future. Understandably, my guest today wants to remain anonymous, so we're not going to be using her real name, but I don't think that takes away from the content at all. So let's take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll meet our guest.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified. And I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. I know you've been through the ringer dealing with this rental property, and I really appreciate you coming on to share your story. I think this is going to be really, really helpful to our listeners.
Yeah, no problem. I definitely hope that I can help someone not get into the mess I did.
Yeah. So tell me, before we get into the story, was this your first rental property?
Actually, it wasn't. We have another house in the Denver area that we've had for 18 years renting and have had wonderful success with that property, and just thought maybe we'd do this again.
Interesting. What made you wait 18 years?
Kind of had a family, trying to save additional money to purchase a property, theoretically, in the Denver area.
Yeah. It's always, I think, a good idea to buy close to where you live. It's just easier to manage it and keep an eye on it. But that really wasn't an option for you, right? Because Denver is such an expensive area.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Probably the last 10 years here in Denver have really kind of put us out of the market for purchasing a rental house. And it would be nice if we chose to stay a little closer to our hometown.
So then walk me through the process. So you decided that you were going to buy a rental property. Denver was out, and that led you to look for a turnkey property out of state. How did you kind of start that whole process of researching turnkey and trying to find a company in a market? Like, how did that all come about?
Sure. We just, really my husband just kind of spent some time on the internet, just kind of keeping his fingers in the business, and just in case something came up and we tried to jump on it, and couldn't really figure it out. That the price points were just incredible, so different from Denver, that he just kept kind of looking at them for a while. And then he brought it up to me, and they were turnkey properties, something very new to us. We've always been very hands-on with our property here in Denver, and just started, calling around the price point. They sell a lot of duplexes and multifamily, fourplexes, apartments, and single family homes.
Okay.
And we just thought we'd keep looking.
Right. And what was the price point?
So for duplexes, they were 50,000, basically 25,000 a door.
Okay.
So 50,000 for a duplex, and that price seemed kind of in line with if you were purchasing other properties in that area. There, it's just a very different market.
Yeah.
Really unique homes, but at a lower price point.
So what kind of research, like, did you do any kind of due diligence on the company, or what did I guess you mentioned that you had called some people, like, who did you call, and like, what did you ask?
I found a real landlord group down there and started talking with them again about a year ago, and kind of got some mixed information, or not information, but kind of feedback, and was definitely told do some due diligence. A lot of these properties are Section 8 properties, so I called into Section 8 and talked with the manager there, and she knew of the company, and again, said, whatever you do, especially being out of town, make sure you really check it out. I'm sure they really can't say much one way or the other,
Right.
but definitely tried to advise me to continue to ask around and make sure that this property is sound, and kind of went through a couple things with me, and a couple places we're doing that. It's very mixed, and I just wasn't listening to kind of what was in between the lines of what they were saying. And just, the property came with a 2-year warranty on it, that they just, how their business is set up, you get management and maintenance covered, and then this 2-year warranty. So if things go wrong, they have this huge warehouse and this crew, and they're working on all these homes, bringing them up and then selling them and then managing them. So we thought,
Right. So if what they're saying is true, there doesn't seem to be a lot of risk, because the property is freshly rehabbed and you've got that great 2-year warranty. So if anything comes up, they're going to fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really what we were really going after. And we figured, in 2 years, we'll really have this down, make some decisions at that point. But, in the end, we still own a property, and, it should be, pretty well taken care of with this warranty.
Right. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of risk price wise. I mean, you're buying a property. Did you end up paying $50,000 for the property?
A year ago, when we first started researching, that's what the duplexes were selling for. What caught my eye was that it was, they were having a big sale with it, and they didn't call it a 50% off sale, but basically they sold it for $25,000 for the duplex.
Okay, so they had it listed for 50, but they were willing to give you a special deal for 25. So a half price, basically.
It was actually listed for $25.
Okay.
And just they were, I don't know, had too much inventory. It caught my eye, and definitely if I thought it was a halfway decent price a year ago, 50% off that, 25,000 was a much better price,
right.
And something that we thought we could really jump into, being that far away.
Looking back on it, is that the first red flag that you see? Because this isn't Macy's, they don't have a 50% off sale on houses. Like, do you think that maybe should have been the first red flag in your eye?
Most definitely that should have been a red flag. And I think we're the kind of people that will just work through the problem and, headstrong. And that should have been a huge red flag.
Yeah. So then what happened next? So you said, okay, we're going to buy it. I guess they probably sent you over a contract. So what happened after that?
Well, so I had a day or so. Everything was super fast. So again, I called into Section 8. I called into the Realtor Association, or the Landlord Association. Again, got sort of similar information. Checked on some things. really worked with the company, and they said, yeah, we've had some problems, but we had a new computer system that really messed us up, and we've got it all ironed out now. I'm like, okay. Because I did hear about a few people saying, hey, we're not getting our rent, but it made sense with the database kind of going down as they were putting all the information in.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do, and we had an option that we could have gone through the title companies and done all the inspections. But we kind of were like, if there is anything wrong, it's going to get fixed in the 2-year warranty. Mm-hmm. They're like, you just, put your information in there and we get people out there to fix it. So we didn't do any inspections. I asked for more and more pictures and didn't really get any additional pictures because I knew that the time frame wasn't exact because, we're buying in February. And of course the pictures, had green grass and, not snow on the ground.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That I think is just for anyone listening. If you're going to buy a property, always get an inspection done. Like that is something that, looking back on it, you probably wish you did because the property was not in the condition that they portrayed it to be in, right?
Exactly. When we purchased it, we understood that one side was already rented to a Section 8 tenant for a long-term lease, or he had already been there a few years, and the other side was ready to rent, all rehabbed, and they even put 3 months of rent in escrow so that it would give them time to go through and get the right tenant in there and, process the change of ownership and all those details. But you're right. It was not in the condition. The one side, the unrented side, actually, probably the pictures were very, very close to what it is. It was in very good shape. And everything, a little, dings here and there, but nothing that's out of the norm for a rental unit. Unfortunately, we later found out that they hadn't turned off the water properly, and it actually had been sitting there for about a year, unrented, and it had frozen pipes. So when we turned on the water, we had a nice surprise on that side.
Wow.
And did some damage to the house. But the rented side, that did have a Section 8 tenant in it, a very nice man. Unfortunately, he really wasn't living in the apartment, and there was a water leak, and really has trashed the apartment for, I'm sure it was been leaking for a month or two.
Wow.
So that became a major issue and not at all what the pictures represented. It was so trashed.
So, this is really kind of, at this point, it just sounds like outright fraud. They were really just out to take advantage of people.
This company is definitely a fraudulent, and there's investigations, I'm sure.
Yeah. Talk to me about the insurance. So you had trouble getting insurance on the property too?
I did, and they weren't real straightforward. I thought it was insured, should have been insured, when we purchased it, and that it would just get transferred over unless I chose to, have a different company. And they're like, oh, no, you have to do all this. I'm like, oh my goodness, nobody told me that detail. So then I went and did some searching on my own to find some companies and had some people come out, and they were like, they couldn't get in the bad side. This was all before we knew about that leak. They're the ones that actually helped identify that there was a leak on the other side. And they're like, sorry, we can't do this. It's trashed. And I'm like, what do you mean it's trashed? I'm just looking at the outside. So then that really, perked me up, and I started making phone calls like crazy, trying to figure out what this is all about. And now I have a property I can't insure, and went down that path. Now, luckily, we were able to insure it, so got that taken care of. But, that started us on the path of dealing with this renter that had to get out because of the water leak and emergency entrance into that. And then finally, what I should have done originally is I had to fly out there and try and take care of the business in person.
So tell me, when you went out there, So you had to do the rehab on the property that should have been done when you bought the place. You had to repair the water damage. How much did it cost you to fix it up?
Well, we are just in process with that. So as of July 1st, I have my first tenant in the what I call the good side. We fixed that a water leak that was created by the frozen pipe, and fix that side and have a tenant in there. We have basically just gutted the bad side where that 2-month water leak was, and we've had to stop doing our repairs over there until we kind of get some money under our belts and make this a doable option. So we're about 6,000 into the whole process, aside from the purchase price. So an additional 6,000.
Do you know how much it'll cost to get the other side up and running? Do you have any idea?
That's the scary part. We definitely jumped into this without knowing a lot. So the company is totally bankrupt, and it's a done deal. There's no warranty. There's no help, no supplies. So the other side, we're going to have to totally recarpet the whole place. It had bed bugs. It took 3 treatments to get rid of all the bugs. And then the water damage to the walls and everything, and just trashed. The kitchen has to be totally redone. The bathroom, the leak was upstairs in the bathroom. That has to be redone, and into the basement. So if 6,000 was for the easy, pretty much ready to go side, with a little bit crossover on both of them, I don't know, 15,000. Okay. It depends on if we have to hire it all out or we make another trip down there and do a lot of the work ourselves and bring in supplies that we can, get off of Craigslist and things like that.
How are you managing the property now? Do you have a new property manager?
At the moment we have a handyman that is well-versed he owns his own properties, so he kind of knows the rental side, and then he just kind of comes and helps fix things that come up and let people in. So right now, for the month, it's gone very well. We really haven't needed any more than that. So I'm hoping that that's all we need, just because I would love to have someone that can just go in, fix something, knows the property, knows the people, but that we don't have a whole lot of issues.
So for anyone that's maybe interested in buying turnkey, what advice would you give them to make sure that this doesn't happen to them?
Listen to what other people are saying for you to do. Definitely do your due diligence. Going out and seeing the properties. This company had a lot of investors that were from out of town, buying multiple units. Go out there, check out each and every unit. Definitely do inspections. And it was great having the landlord association. I just needed to listen to what they were trying to communicate. And not that they were going to say anything bad, but they were just reiterating, check it out, come out and see the property. Section 8, when I talked to that manager, very similar things, definitely know what you're getting into and assess what your costs are going to be, and then make a much wiser decision. I still think that there is, it's a good market to be in out there. I just, it'd be a much different story if we just had minor problems instead of a whole rehab.
Definitely. So has this soured you from rentals?
No.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Rentals are so awesome. I just hate seeing people have such a horrible experience, because for a lot of people, I think they would just give up. But you definitely would buy something else. Would you buy a turnkey again, or after this?
That's hard to tell, because we didn't get the experience of truly having a turnkey where we could be hands off. Now I have to be super hands on. I don't know. The deal still has to be good enough that having someone else do all that management pays for itself. So
Yeah. There are some really good turnkey companies out there. Norada Real Estate, one of our sponsors, I mean, they do such a great job. I've only heard good things about them, but unfortunately, there are some bad people out there that are really just out to take advantage of people. So,
definitely.
before we wrap things up, I just want to point out that there's always two sides to every story, and maybe the owner has a perfectly good explanation for everything that happened here today. And in all fairness, I probably should have invited him on the podcast to tell his side of the story, but to be honest, I 100% believe everything our guest today said, and I didn't want to give him the platform to promote himself or to possibly defraud anybody else. So instead of giving him the opportunity, we just were careful to not expose the name of his company on the podcast today. Before we wrap things up, I just wanted to thank our sponsor today, Ridge Lending Group. If this podcast didn't scare you off from buying a rental property and you are looking to buy your first property or add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and she specializes in doing mortgages on rental properties. She'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. You can find out more and get started right now. Just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. I'd like to thank AutoSlash for sponsoring today's episode. I was recently speaking to Jonathan, the CEO of AutoSlash, and I asked him what the best part of AutoSlash is.
That it not only saves you money, but it saves you time as well. And I think before AutoSlash existed, folks would go out and they would spend all their time trying to get the best possible deal on a car rental, and they'd have to do all this legwork. And then just people hate leaving money on the table. Over the years, we've constantly improved our algorithm and our searching capabilities to the point where we have longtime customers who basically say to us, I don't even bother searching myself anymore. I just let you guys do the work because I never find a better deal than you do anymore. And to us, that's the ultimate measure of success, is when our customers tell us they couldn't possibly do a better job on their own. So we're not only saving them money, but we're kind of giving them a piece of their life back.
And they do save people a ton of money. They save their average user 30% off the best rate that they can find on any other car rental website. You can try it out right now. It's totally free. Just go to autoslash.com. That's AUTOSLASH, autoslash.com. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. We'll be back with a new episode next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.